Hello, and welcome to FBL Broadcasting, part of Canadian Corporation Limited. We are joined with somebody who was very successful, I think. I think we can all give him a round of applause and a clap. Ed Gemmell, Hazlemere Council Councillor, part of the County Council, was part of the Parish Council. I mean, I was glad that you kind of set me straight there, wasn't it, really, I suppose, when you said to me, part of the Unitary Council, actually. It's not the...
That's it. I'm a Hazlemere Parish Councillor, but as from the elections on Thursday, I'm now a Buckinghamshire Councillor, and that's for the Unitary Authority. So effectively, the County Council amalgamated with the district councils that used to exist, like in Aylesbury and in Wickham, created the Unitary Authority. Yeah, so that's the previous one.
Do you know, it's one of those things trying to explain to people. I mean, I even forgot myself at one point. I didn't know which way I was going. It was like, how do we, I mean, obviously coronavirus took hold and COVID-19 rather than coronavirus, depending on how you look at it. But I tell you what, it was good to kind of put that up and then actually change it and then go back through it, because actually I looked you up because I know you very well. We've had obviously dealings and helping and trying to help promote what you do, and seeing how far you've come as well, which is quite amazing. To like, right, you were showing on, for instance, the Hazlemere Parish Council, but you weren't really shown on the Buckinghamshire one. But I then found it all, and it was a bit like, right, now I've got to redo all the thumbnails, I've got to redo all the keywords, I've got to redo all this. But I would like to say, if you don't mind me saying, is we've got people already writing comments here saying, come on, I'm buzzing for this. Yes, let's go. Great. Preach. How far has he come? He's come very far, by the way. I tell you what, why not? Let's bring this up. There we go. We've got this. I'll go through them quickly because I like it when people start commenting. Look, come on. I'm buzzing. Look at this for this. Yes, let's go. You've got yourself a tribe, I think. You're making it, mate. You're making it. So quite far here. Right, here we go. Right. So, Mr. Gemmell, would you like to explain to everybody exactly who you are, what you stand for, and what you intend to do as councillor?
Okay, right. Well, I mean, as of May the 6th, I am now a Unitary councillor. I'm an independent, so I stood in the Hazlemere ward, and I was delighted when the people of Hazlemere voted me in second in the Hazlemere ward. So it was two Conservatives and myself that got in. I stood only on one policy. I've got one of them now. So that policy was Climate Action Now. So that's what I stood for. And so the very interesting thing about it, of course, is that everyone who voted for me knew that I had the one policy of Climate Action Now. And in fact, in Hazlemere, if you look at the results there are only 3 local candidates. So Catherine, who's excellent anyway, the Conservative who came first, she's local, a parish councillor and very active. There's myself, I'm a parish councillor as well, and I was standing only for climate action. Then in fact, the third local was Bottom. So Daniel at the bottom, interestingly, because his main policy was no lockdown. And that obviously didn't resonate with anybody voting. So it was interesting that being local and being for climate action resonated highly. And so, you know, I did very well. 19% of the vote shows that something like 57% of people in Hazlemere actually voted for me. So that was great.
I'd like to just add to that. I mean, you said about Daniel there, about the Freedom Alliance, and I know about the Freedom Alliance. I don't think many people know about them. I think I don't agree with what you just said there, and it doesn't resonate as much. I think if people looked at quite a lot of stuff, they'd probably understand a lot about why the Freedom Alliance and about the lockdown, what that's all about. But what's very impressive, Ed, is the way, I'm going to quickly show another screen here now. You didn't know I had that information, but
no.
Wasn't it cool? It just kind of blended. That's how well we work, you see. You didn't even know I had it. And I'm like, I know what he's going to say. I know what he's going to kind of do. But also I want to show this to the people out there. Look at, this is all the elections for the Buckinghamshire area. Look at Conservatives. Liberal Democrats took the Aylesbury area. Very well done, Liberal Democrats. But yeah, just scrolling down, you got Conservatives. I mean, Labour got a couple of seats, not as many as they used to have. But that is a freight train of Conservative, and you know, I mean, you've got a couple of I was going to say a couple of independents. There you are, Ed. You're there. Look, you just highlight you there. There you are.
Yes. No, there are a number of independents. So
yeah, but you got Wickham Independent. I mean, you can just see there that was a massive win for the Conservatives there, especially in this heartland part. So for you, again, let me bring this back up if you don't mind. Sorry to interrupt you and jump in with my word in, but for you to come second, I mean, you don't have the financial powerhouse the Conservatives do. You really have pushed yourself out and made sure people, and I do believe this, people know who you are and they trust what you say. And they literally are like, I'm voted. I mean, look, you're talking 19% of, you know, I mean, of the electorate there. That is, you know, I'm just, well, you know, come on, the independent people, loving that. And I did say, and we had a chat a while ago, and I had a chat with Aylesbury Mayor, that I am more for helping the independent people than I am for political parties now. And this is why, I don't know if you know, if you watch anything to do with the PCC, it's supposed to be a non-political position. But we'll talk about that if we have time later. Carry on, sir. Sorry to interrupt there.
That's fine. I mean, I think then the next part of your first question was then, what am I sort of hoping to achieve now that I've been elected? I mean, Buckinghamshire Council, in terms of climate change, because that is why I was aiming to get elected, is to get a lot more action going on climate change and on biodiversity and nature. We are one of the most delayed councils in the country. So there are 126 councils in the country who actually have declared a climate emergency and set a 2030 net zero target. Now, they may not make it, but they're going to try to get there and do their best. There's others at 2035, 2040, 2045, and we're stuck right at the back with 2050. And we really need to be moving that forward and to getting things done. And the hope is to bring home to the Conservatives, as they are leading, without any question, Buckinghamshire for the next 4 years, that we need to step up the action. And it's not just on climate, it's also on biodiversity. We've had a huge decimation of our pollinators, our bees and our butterflies over the last 50 years, and that's very, very damaging and potentially extremely dangerous. And we need to step up the work. Now, all Conservatives all around the country have been moving things forward, including the national government, but some are doing a lot more than others. So there are, I think it's 17 Conservative councils of district and above, so including unitaries and counties and cities, that have picked a 2030 or an earlier target and are trying to get their area to that target. So it's not that Conservatives shouldn't be doing it. And in fact, we go back to 1989. I mean, Margaret Thatcher made effectively the first big political speech to the United Nations about the climate. And Margaret Thatcher was urging urgent action on it. And she, of course, is one of the few leaders we've had who was a scientist. So she actually knew what she was talking about and understood what the scientists were saying. I mean, she was a degree in chemistry. So this is Conservative territory, which to some extent in the recent past has been a little bit considered to be territory from the left. And what we need to persuade all of our Conservative councillors now in Buckinghamshire is, not only is it super urgent, but this is not an area just for the left, it's an area for everyone. But the Conservatives have a great heritage in taking climate action, and we really need to get it going now. So my hope is to be extremely collaborative. Being an independent, it means that I'm not tainted, if a slightly negative way of looking at it, but I'm not tarred with the brush of one of the parties. And it's certainly something that I'd like to be working on and have the opportunity to work with the Conservatives to move it forward.
Okay, so have you... got a bit of feedback there. Are you getting what's the sense so far with anybody you communicated with, for instance, the local council part that you're part of, or in the
on the big picture, I did immediately write to Martin Tett, the leader of the Conservative Council, who is on the website as still being the leader of the council, and whether or not that is confirmed on the 26th, which is the first meeting, I don't know, but he's currently the leader. And I wrote and said that I would be happy to take the cabinet position for dealing with environment and climate change, even though I'm not from the Conservative Party. And I wrote the reasons why, because I think that an independent, this is climate change is a universal issue that everybody should be trying to do their most on.
Can I just jump in there?
Sure.
So the thing is, you're saying there on the 26th, is it what they elect in Martin Tet or whoever?
It's the first full council meeting, and I'm not an expert on what happens at this level yet. I've only been doing it for a couple of days.
No,
but Martin Tet is shown on the Bucks website as being the leader currently of the council, and my assumption is he still will be. But the first full council meeting is on the 26th, when positions and things are confirmed and votes take place. But I did write to him anyway and say I would take the cabinet position, which normally you would expect would go straight to a Conservative. And I have had a response from Martin suggesting that if I was a Conservative, that I would have, let's say, a good chance of getting it. But I don't think that's the point of my original application. The application was saying that, look, I would be somebody who would be able to be cross-party, because I'm an independent, but also it's about making sure that we get the ambitious action. And it's not so that I can join the Conservative Party and simply get a paid position. It's about getting much more ambitious action.
See, this is why I keep hearing it feedback. This is why I'm pushing for more independent candidates. People really think about, I want to change my area. I want to do what you've done, Ed. You know, again, I can't say, you know, my hat's off if I was wearing a hat, even though I've got a lot of hair at the moment. So maybe I could, you know, when I finally get that trimmed.
Lockdown hair.
Yeah, lockdown hair. So to me, I mean, if Martin Tet is pushing forward with, you know, a total Conservative local council, I think that's disgusting. I really do. Because for me, where you stand, you work for Scientists Warning Europe, you're in absolutely the best place to be to have that position.
Yes, I mean, I've got a lot of experience, and I've been working in the area heavily over the last few years. So anyway, we'll see. I mean, the discussion is not closed, but obviously, in normal senses, the dominant party would simply elect all of their own people into those positions.
Yeah, but you should be electing people into positions that can actually, you know, you believe can do the best for the people, because these people are elected in, like you have been yourself, been elected by the people, for the people, not for their own political party persuasion and, you know what I mean, handshakes and everything. If somebody can do better than you, you know, from that party, then okay, I want to interview them and find out. I'd actually like to have you both together and then see how much they know, because you have a wealth of information at your fingertips, and I'm talking scientists. You know, you are literally can call up a scientist, I know you can, and literally go, I've got this question and this is what it is, where they wouldn't really have as much as that. And we've talked about other things like with Jacob Glanville and things like that. So it's a very interesting position for you to be in. And I think anybody out there watching, maybe contact the council or maybe your MP and say, I think Ed is in the better position, unless they can explain why, to take that position. I don't see why it should go to a political party, because it's about council.
I mean, I would agree with you, and I think it would be nice to see the council taking advantage of the skills that are there, and there may well be a great environmentalist within the Conservatives. I don't actually know, because I don't know every single one of them clearly at the moment. I mean, as you know from Scientists Warning Europe, I mean, I work as the managing director there, where we represent the tens of thousands of scientists around the world that signed the 3 scientists' warnings to humanity. But in the immediate board and scientific advisory panel, there are roughly 15 top scientists, including the first deputy chairman of the IPCC, including probably the world's top scientist in relation to bees or and pollinators, Professor Dave Goulson, as well as some of the world's top climate scientists. And I mean, within Scientists Warning Europe, we did do a letter to Prime Minister Johnson, which was reported in Sky News and on various other outlets about 2 months ago, urging much more action on the climate. It was signed by 20 of the world's sort of top scientists, including Sir David King and some top scientists from Italy, which is interesting because they're, of course, hosting COP26 together with us. And the letter really urged Boris Johnson to come to be the world's leader in climate, because he can be. You know, we're in a significant economy here. We punch well above our weight in the sort of world political PR, because of English language, because of the Queen, because of Manchester United, because of the City, because of London, because of lots of different reasons. Doesn't matter where you stand on the sort of political spectrum or sporting spectrum, there's always something that will put Britain pretty much punching above its weight. And if we could take a very urgent net zero target in terms of climate, for example, 2030, and make a good effort to get there, we would lead the world. If we managed to make it, we would have developed the software and the systems and the engineering and the political will and everything else to get there. And the rest of the world would be at our doorstep buying it from us. They would want our consultants and our software and our IT and our engineering, and they'd want to know how we got there. And it would drive investments into all of these areas and then drive exports at the point we'd done it. So it would be lovely to convince them. But anyway, we wrote a letter mainly based on scientific basis and signed by actually 19 scientists and the economist Tim Jackson from Surrey University. And we also pointed out that the response at the moment that we're taking in Britain, which is to spend between 0.4 and 0.99% of GDP, of our gross domestic product, in dealing with climate change. That is proposed by the Committee on Climate Change, and that will get us to net zero in 2050. That doesn't look like an emergency response to a critical situation, which will make COVID sadly look like a walk in the park. And we really need to take an emergency response like we did to COVID, move everything forward very, very fast. And we can do it at between 0.5% to 1% of GDP or under. What will it cost us if we go 2030 or 2035? We can do that for 2% of GDP. It'll still look like a pretty easy deal compared to the financial response to COVID.
Okay, interesting. So you're bringing COVID into this as well, so that's quite.
It only as a comparison. I mean, and I'm not an expert on everything that's been done on COVID. The vaccine rollout's obviously been great. We've got some other issues coming up now, but what has happened with COVID is it's shown that from a government point of view, when you see something as a real, true emergency, the equivalent of a sort of wartime footing, you can move mountains and spend vast amounts of money, shift focus of civil service and others to get the job done. And from a population point of view, we can change our behaviour to a large degree to support that political process and that system in order to make it work. And we need that kind of joined up thinking to approach climate change.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd just like to say that the rollout of the vaccine of experimental and hasn't been tested yet for longevity or side effects or adverse effects. Yeah. Again, I'm going to hold my position on that one.
We'll wait to see. But there's I suppose to some extent they had to get on with it because the alternative was not worth thinking about.
Okay. If that's what
as in not trying to put the vaccine out at all was really not worth thinking about if we had the option. So
even though we don't understand exactly what its side effects or possible longevity could be.
I mean, I obviously it's off the topic to some extent, but I think that the scientists. I am a follow the science person, and that's what you have to be on climate change and things as well. And to some extent, the scientists would appear to be saying that it's our best option.
That depends on what scientists you're talking to, though.
Oh yeah, sure. Whereas on climate change now, there isn't really a jury out anymore. All of the scientists are saying we need to get on with it, do it fast, and they're all saying. In terms of climate change, it's now all of them.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say if it was about the vaccine. So no. I mean, what's your stance on the vaccine to children under the age of 16, or actually under the age of 18?
Well, I haven't really considered it very much. I think, to be honest, it's if it was me, I'd simply be putting that one off until we get to the point of having vaccinated others that are in much more risky categories. So, and then, seeing what the position is. I mean, I haven't heard what the scientists have said about that age group, so I think it would be a bit silly to comment on it. I certainly know that, if you're under 18, or in fact, you're probably under 20 or 25, you're pretty unlikely to catch COVID. If you do, to catch it badly.
No. Well, from the CDC, which is the American medical bit, chances of survival from COVID under 18 is greater than 99.9%.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's vast.
So I've been checking the facts and the figures and looking at the scientific research of it also. So there's that. Anyway, back to what you're going to do. So you got what, the 26th of May, they decide on whether Martin Tech carries on. You're going to obviously try and get the position onto the, climate change sort of side of things. Do you think, I mean, again, it's the Conservatives that you think will probably take that position rather than an independent. What will you do if you don't get it?
Well, I don't know if people understand quite what happens, and I didn't myself, to be honest, until I got on it and started having the presentations of how the council works. But there are then what you call scrutiny committees. So there are committees that look over the work of the cabinet and will check and scrutinise if they think that's appropriate and whatever. Now, obviously, those committees, because the Conservatives are so dominant, those committees will be completely dominated by Conservatives. That doesn't mean that every single Conservative agrees with everything the other ones agree with either. So there are opinions on these committees, and the Liberal Democrats as the second party, and then the Independents and a few Labour will also have the opportunity to be on those committees. So I would hope to be on the committee that is for transport, or as in the old council, it was transport, environment and climate change. Now, unless the structure is changed, that would be the committee I would hope to be on, to provide scrutiny and to provide the benefit of my knowledge and my access to knowledge.
I was going to say, access to knowledge is massive.
It's the access to knowledge. I mean, I'm not a scientist originally. I just have access to the scientists, and I work with them on a regular basis. So that's where it's coming from. And if I needed to reach Sir David King to get an opinion from him on something, I could pick the phone up and talk to him about it. So I wouldn't say I'm a friend of his or anything else, but he would cooperate and is a great person to talk through things with. So that would be the next step, I think. I mean, I think the other thing that's worth saying is that from my perspective, I'm working on the international and national level with Scientists Warning Europe. I'm now going to be working to try and move Buckinghamshire forward to greater action. But there's also massive inspiration coming from the sort of local and individual kind of level. So in Hazlemere, where I'm a parish councillor, we declared a climate emergency about less than 18 months ago, and we picked a 2030 net zero target. And at the time when we declared it, we then organised as well to have a climate emergency working party, and that is a party that's mainly consisting of local residents with some parish councillors on it. And we got to work, and our view on the working party at the beginning was not to come up with a big study of what Hazlemere needs to do and a strategy on how it needs to do it, but get started, get stuck in, roll up, get our hands dirty and get some projects going. And so we now have 4 or 5 projects and activities that we're doing. So literally as we speak, there are dozens of volunteers going around in Hazlemere delivering these, our B Squared project, which has seeds attached to it. And these are seeds to put 1 metre square of wildflowers into your front garden, hence the B Squared idea. And the idea of that is to try and create a pollinator corridor, because we've so decimated our bees and moths and butterflies over the last 50 years. I mean, up to 50% or more reduction here and in other parts of Europe. And if you listen to the scientists, they are more scared, scientists who deal with nature, than even the ones dealing with climate, because of what we may have done and it may be irreversible. And we have the World Wildlife Fund saying that 17 bee species within the UK have become regionally extinct. Well, they're regionally extinct for the simple reason that you have a catastrophic weather event, let's say in a particular area of the country, that wipes out a species of bee, or something else happens in the habitat.
Oh, I think we're losing you there, Ed.
Okay.
You're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. And whereas after this event that's wiped out a bee species in an area, they could repopulate from other parts of the country. They would just travel there gradually over time. They're not able to repopulate because of too much concrete, so too much tarmac, concrete and roads, too many houses, too many monoculture lawns that we mow too often, so no flowers on them for pollinating insects, and too much monoculture agriculture where there isn't anything for a pollinator. So they're not repopulating. So what we're doing in Hazlemere is every single household will get enough flowers to put a metre square or 2 or 3 plots in their front garden of pollinating wildflowers that have flowers that the pollinators will like. And then the bees can travel all the way around Hazlemere, every 5 or 10 meters, there'll be yet another place for them to stop, get pollen and refuel as they travel around. And since we started that, not only have the people of Hazlemere got excited about it, and lots of them asked me about it, even when I was out campaigning, but in Wickham now, they've taken it up as well. They'll be trying to get out 3,500 to 4,000 packets of seeds over the next month or two as well. And I know that the Wickham Environment Group has joined with Friends of the Earth to try and distribute it. We've had inquiries from surrounding parishes and things as well around us. We've had inquiries now from schools who may want to join it. And in the end, we may be able to inspire, just from Hazlemere, to have a massive bee and pollinator corridor gradually expanding all the way out through Buckinghamshire. The project was paid for by 3 sponsors. I mean, Bucks Buzzing, which is connected to the Buckinghamshire Council in some way, Indigo Lily, which is a pottery and an art shop in Great Missenden, and then Hurst Estate Agents, who kindly put the money in, so it's cost nothing to local people, and everyone's excited. And that goes with another project on rewilding, where we'd like to create wildflower meadows around Hazlemere, or rewild in combination. And on a place called Brackley Road, we've agreed with residents to put in a wildflower meadow there. And these are bigger areas now, which can be connected again by the bee corridors to go around. And we'd like to encourage schools to put things in as well. We've then got an advanced recycling program, which has been set up in conjunction with the community centre, small now, but if we can get it going, we'll have expanded into more and more areas of recycling. We've got a net zero carbon program for the parish council, where we've taken our first step, which is just going to a green energy supplier, but we've got more steps related to solar power and heat pumps and things that we hope to bring in. We're running Hazlemere climate talks, so we've had 11 talks now every month. We talk about a different topic and people turn up and come and listen to it. And the last one was about carbon footprinting. And we're now recruiting more people onto this working party to get more and more projects going, including now starting to work on a strategy for net zero 2030. But all of this is, we're doing it as well in the sense of, we want to create things that can be copied by groups anywhere in the country, but particularly locally. And we have, as a group, through one of the gentlemen, Stuart Gaunt, who's working on the group, set up a website which is specifically to be a resource for everybody. So when you come in, you'll realize it's from the Hazlemere Climate Emergency Working Group. And then when you can click on any of the information there, and if you go deeper down, information will then be shared. So the Wickham group are also going to have a page on it where they come in, it'll be unique to them. But if you click on bee information, it'll go down to the same place. So we're pooling the resources, and then other groups can come and join us from around the county, hopefully, where again, they can come straight in, all the resources are underneath, they just set up their landing page and they're off. And then they can start copying projects and everything else. It's a wonderful, yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress. It's up and running already, and we're already using it, both groups. We've already got a bee map. So we've got a map showing now where people have been planting their flowers and things. It's only just starting, but it'll show the Wickham and the Hazlemere ones together. And if other groups join us, we'll map them as well. And it's all about inspiration. It's all about getting people moving. And once you see people around you doing things, you get more inspired to do it yourself.
I've seen I keep on hearing myself. Have you got your phone or something which is creating an echo effect? Is your phone on?
I can turn it off completely. I'll turn it off completely anyway.
I was going to turn down the volume. Maybe that's what it is. So you've been very good at this. I mean, if we talk about, for instance, the Note to Humanity, when you finally got Boris getting the cup torn off of him by his aide, saying, no disposable cup. I mean, I know I had a massive smile when that came out, and I know you were obviously ecstatic about that. And to see certain, shall we say, coffee making facility companies literally change the way that they charge, because it's like, well, if you bring your own cup, then we won't charge you 50p. And I thought it was amazing to be part of that. And FBL was there with you as you did that, which was a long day.
And you've been our partner on 2 projects, on No Disposable Cup Day, and then on the reading that we did outside the Houses of Parliament, where we read out the 20,000 names of the scientists that signed the second scientist warning, just to emphasize to people how many scientists that is. So if you remember, I was sat outside the Houses of Parliament and we were streaming it live. And after 14 hours, we had not completed the list. We'd done 98% of it, but we hadn't completed the list after 14 hours. That's how long it was taking to read out the names of all those scientists.
Yeah. And how much did the FBL charge you for that facility?
Oh, it was astronomical. No, you were extremely supported, Martin. It wouldn't have been able to be done without you.
Well, again, I like the environment. Okay, I drive a camper van because that's my mobile studio, but it's kind of that, like you're saying, net zero. Think of ways that you can do to offset. And, that's what you're trying to do, really, isn't it? If the amount that we produce, in carbon dioxide, you kind of want to say, well, if we do this, then we need to do something to balance that all out. And we all live on this earth. Let's try and make it nice and work for everybody, isn't it?
I have just gone to an electric car. And before everybody listening groans about the usual thing, which is how expensive they are, I bought the cheapest full electric car secondhand that I could get in order to get going on it. £6,000.
6,000.
So, and I mean, it would have been possible maybe to get one at about £5,000. And I looked at some, but I was looking at them between 5 and 6, and this was the one that then looked to be the car. So now the problem of that is it doesn't have the range. So its maximum range is 85, maximum. Ooh. So I can't reach any of my family around the country without recharging. But then I have to look at life a bit differently. So I have to say, right, well, what's more important? Is it the planet and is it my children's future? Or is it the fact that I can reach one of my sisters and 45 minutes quicker than if I stop to put electricity into it on a charging station? And really, when I put my mind to it, stopping for 45 minutes is not that inconvenient to be doing the right thing. I can tell you, if you don't mind, with my camper van, I want to convert it to electric. Now, that's going to cost you can do conversions, but I believe they cost currently about the same price as the cheapest electric car. So it's probably £5,000 to convert it, but I don't know much more about it.
I've been looking into it.
But visualization for people, the crucial part is thinking of my normal car, fossil fuel car that I have, and I'm selling because I've only done this recently. And I take my son from Hazlemere occasionally because we cycle most of the time. He and I cycle to RGS each day. So we cycle from Hazlemere to the Royal Grammar School, just over 2 miles. Now, the carbon emissions in terms of weight, that your CO2, when you go just the 2 miles to the Royal Grammar School, if you try to imagine the carbon emissions, it would look like a solid lump of Tesco butter. So just buy it off the shelf. That's the amount of carbon emissions in solid form from a one-way trip to the Royal Grammar School. So there you go. And coming back to get home and picking him up in the afternoon and getting him. It's 4 butters in terms of solid carbon. That's the weight that we were emitting to take him to school and bring him home. And the minute I visualized it like that, so every week, a heavy brick, you do more than that every week, taking your kid to school and back. And I just went, I can't do this. I can't visualize this anymore. I've got to try and move away from it.
See, it's interesting you say that. I made this big, massive thing about it ages ago, which was, why is the government not pushing for single dad, 2 kids? Now, the way they sort out schools is unbelievable. That you could live next to a school, but you have to go to a school the other side of town, which is like, what on earth is going on? Forget about whether the school's a good one or a bad one. You want your child to go to the school next door to you. You can't. It has to go into whatever. Yeah. But the point is, why isn't the government pushing to make, for instance, like we're saying about the small traveling? So I'm going to say this, it's not sexist. It's the mums out there who do the school run. Now, I'm a dad and I've done the school run. So I'm just saying a single parent school run. There we go. Let's say that. Why is the government not helping or not financially putting, their hand in the pocket to say, let's put an incentive out there so that people can either multi-use these electric cars? Now, I'm all for electric. Why do we need to use up fossil fuels? Yes, if we're going across country and it's quite a lot of mileage, okay, that's another story. But locally, the amount you use your car, by the time it's warmed up, you've already reached your destination, so you're using up more fuel. So why? I mean, hopefully that's what I hope you will do when you start taking your position. You'll be saying, look, where's the incentive? And I've watched stuff and I've researched it, and I've seen that they're quick enough to give a discount on people buying a diesel, or they're quick enough to, which they're now changing, by the way, because obviously diesel's actually quite bad for the environment, they've worked out. And with biodiesel, there was the rapeseed issue, which actually was pushing up the grain price, and bread, which, you know, and the food chain, everything like that was pushing up the costs. So electric cars, especially for short distance, like you're saying, yours is 85 miles. That does good. I mean, I'm not being funny. Even if you had one of those cars just for driving around town, going out doing this, going to see a friend, or sure, like you made me do a few months ago, where I had to go and walk uptown to take a photo for the Wombles, which I did, and it rained. It came down like, I did say, Ed, you owe me one, because I was soaked. But I did it because it was like, you came on the show, and you know what? I'll try and do my bit for the environment. Like you said, walk up there, blah, blah, blah. And that's what I did. But we don't need to use fossil fuel that much.
We don't. I mean, I think that the reality of the car actually is that I can charge it at home using a 3-pin plug. You know, it's then cheaper than going off and getting petrol anyway. It's saving money. And when I have it charged up to 85 miles, actually that's more than I do in a whole week, unless I've got some sort of special trip to do. So if it's going to the shops and everything else, and that's, in fact, it's a lot more than I do, because I cycle most places anyway. But but even if I didn't cycle, all those trips, it would be enough to do the whole thing, including going off to play a sports match or watch the kids play a sports match at the weekend, all of it, unless it's an unusual distance. So it hasn't been a problem, and it's much cleaner, and I enjoy it. There are issues as to whether you use cars at all, because the embedded emissions in an electric car is said to be 50,000 miles. So it's not until you get to 50,000 miles you're actually doing the environment any benefit. I think your previous thing about incentives from the government, obviously they're moving in that direction. My simple analysis of everything is, if we picked a more ambitious carbon net zero target, that would focus our minds on how we get there. And immediately one of them would be coming down to, well, what do we do about the transport system in every aspect, not just cars? And we would then be accelerating change from fossil fuels to electric or hydrogen or whatever. But there's a lot of other stuff in the mix. And again, within Hazlemere, and anybody from Hazlemere or nearby who's interested, we'd like to work on a transport program. So we'd like to look at how in Hazlemere can we affect what's happening in transport. So that's obviously encouraging people to walk and cycle more, right? Well, what's discouraging them from cycling? Well, several things: potholes in the road, dangerous car driving, or traffic where it's not moving, but you haven't got a space between the curb and the car to get past it when the traffic is stopped. But also it's I might look silly to my friends or whatever it would be. So there's some psychological stuff involved as well. And if we had a big push on it, the next thing might be to encourage car clubs. So actually, having got my car, there isn't really a reason it's not shared with 2 other families, let's say, and we could probably do everybody's local stuff just on that 80 miles, I should think, going off to get the shopping and drop the kids off to school. And then you wouldn't need to have fossil fuel cars as much, and look at the holistic system on how to do it locally, which then could then be expanded more around the county, which then moves into public transport. So electric hydrogen buses running more efficiently, having them potentially free or not, depending on what you're trying to encourage behavior change and all that sort of thing. Obviously, it overlaps with issues in the future with AI, driverless cars, 5G, and whether these things are good or bad, whether they are going to cause health problems and all sorts of things. But if you could have a seamless transport system using whatever tech, where effectively you could go on your app and go, right, I'm going from here to Edinburgh, and your app would then tell you, right, well, a driverless car is going to pick you up in 10 minutes. You're going to be the 3rd person dropped off because it's already dropping off others. It's dropping you off to your electric bus. Your electric bus is going to link up to your electric train. Your electric train will get to here where you'll be picked up by another driverless car, and the whole thing would be seamless. Then you wouldn't need a car at all. I mean, of your own, you'd be simply using a seamless system. But there are technical issues and I'm not the expert in terms of the amount of energy used, the health problems with 5G, and all these other things that go with it. So I can't really comment on that, although I'm hearing a lot of question marks being raised by scientists on those issues. But you can see the future is different.
5G, I mean, by the way, the chat, and we're getting the feedback still. The chat is all lit up, by the way. It's quite interesting. 5G, people are saying climate change equal. There we go. There's one. 5G equals climate change. I mean,
the vast amount of energy use when you put up 5G. I mean, some of the things that are obvious is 5G will use vastly more energy. Okay, that's one thing. Then you're going to have the issue of putting in the antenna. You're going to have local antenna, and local antenna will have to be put in. And I don't know the exact locations, but literally sort of street by street potentially. And if you're out in countryside areas and things, that could mean trees coming out or habitats being destroyed and disturbed. So there's a lot of issues. There's then health benefit issues, that there is an issue over the waves that are going around the 5G and whether that's going to cause cancer and other things. So there's a lot of issues around it. I'm not the expert. I just am aware of the issues, and I've talked with some of the scientists. I mean, we have some of the scientists have also mentioned that potentially satellites 5G will interrupt the meteorological satellites, meaning that we may not be able to get the weather information we've been getting, which potentially means early warning systems for areas for problem weather may not come on time. I don't know how they're solving that. But equally, I have heard on a benefit side from one of our scientists that the satellite coverage and the coverage provided by 5G in Africa would potentially allow them to predict better where inclement weather will occur, and to help them to plant crops in the right places so that they can actually work better. So, and that's coming from a scientist who's suggesting that it looks like that's going to be the case. So it's a very difficult one, but there's no question. More consumption, more power, materials, of land, all sorts of things.
And also, not good for bees, not good for insects because of the frequency.
It could be decimating. So yeah, I mean, again, I've talked again to experts in bees and pollinators, where the scientists themselves, at least the ones I've talked to, are not sure. But the problem is we're not sure. So why would we take the risk? Why not wait a couple of years and get sure before we get onto it? I mean, that would be.
You just promoted the vaccine.
Sorry.
You just promoted the vaccine, saying that what a wonderful job. Why aren't we waiting? Do you see what I mean? You're saying that.
I do think it's different, and I obviously not being. I mean, I'm not the scientist on either of these things, but I mean, people were dying from COVID, and on a balance of probabilities, the politicians or the scientists involved have had to say, we believe on the balance of probabilities on our current knowledge that it would be better to get vaccinated than not. And we think the dial is so much in that way that we've got to get on with it. I think on 5G, I think the difficulty for me is I don't see the benefits so much. So the one I gave in terms of African agriculture and the benefit in terms of driverless cars, for instance, I don't see the benefits as being so huge that we should be rushing into it without spending the right amount of time from the scientific point of view, establishing whether these things are right or wrong. There's enough detrimental effects where there are still question marks that should be solved, debunked or proved before we move ahead. With the vaccine, when you've got the whole country under lockdown and lots of people dying, I think they had to make a decision straight away on the best available science they had at the time and get on with it. Whether you would have made the decision or not, a decision needed to be made based on the information available at the time.
But yeah, okay, that. But I can't really.
It's sort of creeping in without us making a decision. It's as if the politicians have made a decision. We're not really debating it. It's not as if it's on the radio and the TV every single day with the scientists talking to us about it.
Yeah, but
it seems to be happening.
Yeah, but the point is what we have on TV or the mainstream media is propaganda. They're pushing forward a thing about this vaccine, about it's all wonderful, it's safe. It's not. It's experimental. It's only they call it safe. Yeah, it's been it's only been approved for emergency use. Yeah, and telling people to take it and I can tell you, greater than 99.9% chance of survival for under 18s, and just a little bit less for under 30s. Okay, and they're talking about vaccine passports. You can't go and do this if you won't get vaccinated. This is very extreme. And the reason I'm bringing it up with you is it's something you need to kind of look at. And as a councillor, kind of say, right, how is this actually looking? Because it seems a lot about discrimination. Our human rights are being violated worldwide, by the way, not just in the UK. And I find it interesting you're saying about let's just hold back with like the 5G, driverless cars and all that lot. But this is something that people are putting in their arms that they do not know the longevity of it. And all I'm asking is people to have informed consent, which isn't happening. Informed consent. I've tried my best and I push out there informed consent. If you take it, that's fine, as long as you know the risks. That's what I'm saying. There's risk with taking it, there's risk with not taking it. Now, like you're saying about the 5G network and driverless cars, can we hold back? But you know, some people would say no, wouldn't they? They would just push forward. Like, for instance, Tesla. Tesla's quite amazing with what they've achieved with their driverless technology. There's been a few deaths with it. But really, the idea of driverless cars, I've got people who say to me, I would never get in a driverless car. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Why would I trust a computer? And you go, well, because there's I think it's 128 sensors on a Tesla. And in that, yeah, they're watching for stuff you can't even possibly see yet. And there is a chance that, yes, things can go wrong. It's in its infancy, by all means. You know,
I think Martin, so the first thing is just to very briefly finish on the vaccine one. I don't agree with you, and we'll have to beg to differ on it.
Well,
you know, and that's absolutely fine. The reason I don't agree is because a lot of people were dying, and on top of that, life had become very complicated, mental health issues at home and all that sort of thing. I mean, the COVID-19 support group in Hazlemere, the thing we've directed ourselves towards is loneliness and isolation, but effectively you're talking potentially mental health. So there are issues related to lockdown as well as the fatalities. And my belief is that from what I have heard from the scientists, and I haven't spoken to any personally, whereas on climate change I will have done, is that I believe that the right decision has been made, that the risks have been looked at, and people who have the opportunity, I think, should go and get the vaccine unless they're in a group where scientists are saying you shouldn't have it. Pregnant women, for instance, I don't know what the final conclusion is, but that's certainly something that's come up. But in general, go and get it because you're protecting not just yourself, but all the rest of us. But we'll have to beg to differ on that. But on the 5G one, which is different to driverless cars, because 5G is just 5G is a much wider issue than driverless cars, and I don't have a particular view on driverless cars. I'm just talking about 5G as something that is suddenly, it's in there, it's happening. When you talk about informed consent on that, there hasn't been any, because there hasn't really been public debate. And even if you regard mainstream media as the propaganda, we haven't really had the propaganda for 5G. There hasn't been enough debate that you could even say there's been propaganda. It's just sort of happened. And the issue is, and I have talked to our scientists on it from a climate change point of view, and they are not sure. Well, this is the issue, is they're not sure. So if they're not sure, we should have done some more things in certain areas, which is, for instance, energy use of 5G. It is the health issues related to cancers and things due to the actual waves themselves. It's the biodiversity destruction and whether it's worth it in terms of the antennas going in. I don't have the answers to it. And the scientists I have talked to have said they don't either, and they haven't seen other scientific reviews which have shown it. And in that case, I think we should be stopping, holding off, and whether it is for 6 months or a year or two, and get to know whether that's really going to be beneficial and not dangerous. The jury's out on that at the moment.
Okay. Wow. The jury's out. It'd be interesting to speak to these scientists, actually, maybe get a show and then debate these ideas, because I mean, there must be people for and people against. I mean, 5G is a big thing.
I think within the group of scientists that I associate with, you'll find, as of a few months ago, because we did even talk about it, is the majority are on the fence because they think there aren't enough proper scientific reports and studies being done that they could take a proper view, and the minority are against. Okay. Right. One of the scientists I've talked to, as I said, talked about the African issue and could see a clear benefit, and he was pro for that benefit, but he again didn't have the information on the side effects and things to give an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's. Whoa, lost my pen. Sorry. So let's move off to 5G then. So what else? What else are you going to push forward with then? You've got your environmental sort of strategy. Looks like already set. You're going to push that forward. Anything else about the local area, or is it just literally about, for instance, the environment?
You know, I stood on two bases. One is very clear, climate action now, and the other reason I stood is because I'm a locally active, concerned person. So doing anything I can for Hazlemere. I mean, it won't be any surprise to anybody listening that the number one local issue mentioned to me, as probably every other candidate in every other area, as an average, is the roads. Everybody wants to get their roads repaired. Which does, to some extent, overlap with environmental concerns and things like that. And maybe I'm feeling that in the Hazlemere area, we may be wanting to be a bit more creative, and that may be a Buckinghamshire thing. So it's looking at the roads might not wear out quite so much if we repaired them with better quality materials, but they also might not wear out so much if we had less cars on them, or they didn't drive so fast, or we have more people cycling. So there's an element of getting the job done now. And getting the job done in a way that is going to be, how do I say, for the long term rather than just one season and it's all broken again. So maybe there's an issue there on the quality of the repairs. And the second thing is then on how we use the roads. Maybe we can use them in a way which means they won't wear out so quickly. Now, that's a different way of approaching it. What I do understand, because everyone's asked me, so I've sort of looked into it, is that there is, certainly within Buckinghamshire, it's regarded as there is a season for road repairing, and we're just about in the season now.
I'm about to say we are.
Exactly. They're going to start road repairing now, as I understand it. There's also the budget thing. So as your new budget year starts, and you can see that you have budget, and I'm not privy to the decisions on budgets or anything else at the moment, but you can see that as budgets become available again, suddenly you can get people out doing these relatively expensive jobs. So this is all about to happen. What happens in the future, though, if we get our roads repaired properly or not, I don't know. Look at how much debt the country has taken on because of COVID, and how that will affect services in the future. I have no idea. I think it's going to be a pretty difficult 4 years as a councillor or an MP or a member of government because of all that debt that we're going to have to start dealing with at some point.
There is a lot of debt. There's no doubt about that. Yes. Okay. Is there? I mean. Okay, so we've got roads. I mean, I think with roads, it's a lot of obviously heavier vehicles. I mean, they're really what cause a lot of it, I would presume.
Sure. I mean, again, you could talk about HS2's heavy vehicles going over.
Drop that in there, HS2. You beat me to it.
Sure. I mean, HS2 is a pretty easy one for me. I'm against it. I think it's ridiculous. And I think from whether it's a Hazlemere and Buckinghamshire point of view, I haven't heard anybody say that they wanted it within the county or within the locality. So my stall is that I'm against it. It also virtually makes me cry when I go on the way from Hazlemere to Aylesbury and I pass, the places where they cleared ancient trees and all that sort of thing. I think it's absolutely criminal. And I try to point out on the trees that when a tree gets to about 30 years, it comes to battle for us on the environment, and it takes 21 kilograms of CO2 out of the atmosphere every year. And you have to have something between 400 and 800 mature trees per person to take our pollution out of the atmosphere. But when you plant a tree in its first 10 years of its life, it doesn't even take out 1 kilogram. It's less than 1 per year. So actually, when you're planting trees, so for instance, if HS2 knocks down 1,000 trees and says they're going to plant 1,000 trees, those 1,000 trees are not going to be there to benefit anything in the battle against climate change for 20 to 30 years, because the amount of carbon they're taking out is so tiny. Well, of course, they have a little seedling that's gradually growing. I mean, you can't get much carbon into it. So it's sort of, you can see it, but once it's a bigger tree, if it grows, you can see the exponential effect of taking up the carbon. So the HS2 is a climate catastrophe. And then the cement that's going in, and cement causes vast amounts of, I think it's like 6 times its own weight in carbon emissions going into it. Then the cement, of course, is locking down the ground, fixing the insects underneath so they can't get out, not allowing the water to go down. Above it's creating another area where pollinators are not able to move around. I mean, it's just a complete and utter disaster. So, and for in the south, a limited benefit on the time for us to get from here to Birmingham, and from people in our county, zero improvement. So, because you'd have to go into London to get on your train.
Yeah, you have to go into London to get on it, wouldn't you? Or go to Birmingham.
So it'll have no benefit to people in Buckinghamshire at all. So yeah, I mean, I'm obviously against it, as everybody else is.
Yeah, okay.
I think one other thing, if you wanted a local issue, and again, I stood on only the one issue of climate change, climate and biodiversity, but people have talked again locally about police. So, and having more local police. You can't blame the police. I think they do a brilliant job, but we don't have enough of them, right? We're not likely to be getting many more of them if we have massive debt. Because however much that the Conservatives are going to recruit police, and I'm sure they'll try, but we're going to run out of money somewhere, and we can't spend it, our money on everything. So I've no idea how they'll deal with it on a budget point of view. But maybe we can look at it more creatively and getting more police on the street. Maybe it's as simple as suggesting, right, well, if your policeman lives in a particular area, if his beat would include that area, and he could do a bit of remote working. So we could either work from home or work from a local place rather than having to travel off to Wickham or Princes Risborough or wherever his particular place is. He could be on the beat a bit more. So maybe if we looked at it creatively, we could get our local policemen working some degree close to where they're living, and then they'd have a few more hours on the beat all the time, and they'd be showing more presence in the local community.
Well, what I learned from Alan Robinson and Letitia as well was a lot of the police officers are put into like special task forces. And there is literally like 4 police officers to look after the whole like Thames Valley area at certain times. And there's shift changing, and there's loads of stuff. I mean, I wanted to concentrate. Remember when we last spoke, I wanted to concentrate on interviewing a load of councillors, but I actually dedicated my time to the PCC because I found a document that clearly stated that it shouldn't be a political position.
Right.
It shouldn't be. And I can't say this enough to people. Again, I pushed forth to the people, which is Letitia and Alan, who was independent. Letitia was Labour, Alan was independent, only because those two are the only two who came to the table and came and spoke to me. And I questioned like I did do you and everybody else, just because we're friends doesn't mean we can't ask questions and debate and have our thing. But I found it very interesting from Alan, who was an ex-policeman, of all the stuff that's going on and about the way the police are being used. Basically to push government law, which is non-victimless crime, which brings money in, and it's a bit like, hang on a sec, what's going on? It's a big one, and we won't see a difference. I may be
uninformed here, but why do we need an elected official to run the police? I'm sorry, I may be uninformed because I don't know the system, but it seems to me the best person to run the police isn't that the chief constable or the head of police who's been in it all the time and understands it, and then he gets his direction, whether it's from government and the Houses of Parliament or from Buckinghamshire's Council.
No. In the Constitution, we've got. Sorry, I'll just quickly say it. You've got politicians in one area. You've then got policing in another area, and then you have judiciary in the third area. They are kept separate in them. In the Constitution for a reason. It's so that the politicians can't use the police as their own, enslavers basically, and pushing what their agenda is or what their political position is. And obviously, police can't do anything for the judiciary. The judges make their own decisions on, for instance, sentencing and stuff like that. Even though technically a judge isn't supposed to give out the term of imprisonment, it's supposed to actually be up to the jury. That was an interesting one I found out as well. But correct me wrong, people in the comments if I am wrong about that, but I believe that is true. The thing is I don't think there's a problem with having a PCC, because the PCC is there for the people, to represent the people. And the chief constable, if they're allowing political or whatever is financially, whether it's backhanders, I think we've had quite a lot of that with the Conservatives lately, with obviously what's been going on with the ex-Prime Minister and stuff. But when you've got all that, and Matt Hancock as well, when you've got that controlling policing, that's where it gets dangerous. Obviously, if they talk to the Chief Constable, you're right, the Chief Constable decides on how to deploy the forces. And I mean, there's a thing called the Peeling Law, Peeling Principles, which is 9 of them, which is all about, they swear their allegiance to the Queen or to the monarch, yeah, but they're there by the people and being put and given money to look after so that we can carry on doing our daily lives, basically. And what's interesting there is that that's why the PCC can look over it and sack the chief constable, because, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to. Bring down crime and sort, you know, make everybody safe. And the whole idea is to protect people and protect property. It's a very big one. It really is. And to see, like you're saying, people able to see police on the beat, and this is what Alan was talking about. He wants to see more bobbies on the beat rather than doing these special, you know, what do you call it, incentives about stopping a bit of, you know, cyber crime or, you know, a spout or whatever. If there's more police on the beat, people will feel safer because, for instance, the copper walking down the street would write your name down like, oh, I saw Ed at 10:34 at night, which is a little bit weird. I know you could be a little bit of scallywag. Just make a little note, you know, and then when they see me, well, I'll just take Martin away. So it's one of those things. That's why having a police on the beat is good, because it.
Yeah, I think it's essential, and I think in Hazlemere we've suffered over the last 6 to 12 months from dog snatching. Okay, so and we've had quite a few. I mean, I've talked to people as I've been walking around, and there are quite a few ladies, particularly here, that will only walk their dog when there's two of them. So they go out with their husband, or they go as a pair. Two ladies will walk together with their two dogs, so that they can protect the dog. Well, It's a bit bizarre because my mum, in her era, my mum used to go out with our dog, so the dog would protect her when she was walking. So it's just got very bizarre. So, you know, and we'd like to try and solve that. We've had two early teens who've been hit with baseball bats by somebody with a mask on and had their electric scooter taken in Hazlemere. Now, again, if you just had your policeman being much more visible, but I mean, really quite a lot more visible, these sort of things may not happen so much. I do want to pick you up, though, on your comment on cybercrime to some extent, just on a recent personal contact. And it's one of the scientists. So one of the scientists I work with around Christmas had his entire savings stolen. And this is an elderly scientist who is really just about to retire, probably should have retired, and everything went. And it went through effectively financial cybercrime, and now he's trying to recover it. So, and that has obviously completely changed his life, but a vast amount of stress on him, as well as potentially changing his, you know, the rest of his life in terms of his quality.
Cybercrime or cyber policing, shall we call it, needs to be kind of like centralized, you know, as in its own force in itself, because it's, from what you're saying, this is people from overseas who contact. I don't know how obviously the points of it is, but emails and phone calls. I mean, the phone calls that I receive, I try and keep them on the phone as long as I can because I know it's dodgy. But if they spend an hour with me on the phone, if I can spare the time, I know that's an hour where, for instance, like you're saying about your friend who's a scientist, they haven't got through to them. I know people who literally are, you know, I've said to them, if you receive a phone call or tell to go to a website, what you need to do, if you don't mind me whacking this out there, is literally, let's just say Nationwide call you up, say, oh, go to here. You don't, you look up Nationwide and you go to that website. You go to their own official website. You don't click on a link, no matter what they do. And this is all about education, about allowing people and making them understand.
But Martin, I do have to apologise seeing the time, because I have, being like you, a single parent, I have a son who's waiting to be picked up, who I will have to go off with my electric car and go and get right now. Otherwise, he'll be screaming when I get there. So okay. Before
you go, sorry again. God, we really did have a good chat this time. Not that we don't always. There was a lot of comments on there. You might want to have a look at them. Very interesting. Some of them putting the stuff. And hopefully we can catch up soon. Let us know, and hopefully you do get elected in. But is there one last word you want to say before we close this all down?
Well, obviously, thanks for everybody for joining us. Thanks for having me on here. And what I would ask other people to do is I'm much more likely to be effective, as are some of the other candidates, particularly the Green Party candidate who got in, Green Party councillor, in moving forward climate and biodiversity action, if everybody else gets involved as well. And the number one way that other people can get involved today is to find out if your parish council or town committee has places on it that are available, and if it has, join them, because lots of the parish and town committees, town councils, didn't have enough candidates this time round, so they have places now available for people to be co-opted. And if you're interested in protecting diversity, changing things, getting a climate emergency crisis or declaration with a net zero target, join your parish council if they've got a space, join your town council if they've got a space, and try and make a difference. And every single time that a parish council or a town council declares a climate emergency and sets a net zero target, it puts pressure on the unitary council. And every unitary council that declares puts more pressure on the government. Every government that declares puts more pressure around the world on other governments to do it. And we start to move the whole thing forward. And you can do your bit locally really proactively. So it's worth looking in now, because all the elections have just finished, and finding out if your parish council or town council still has places on it.
Wow, well said. Well, okay. Once again.
And lovely to be on here, Martin. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, okay. Catch you later. Bye-bye. Thank you all. I'm going to see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe.
Bye.